back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is 10 cards you should be putting in your Commander decks, episode 20. And starting out this time with Ark Bond. 3 mana instant, 2 and a red. Choose target creature. When that creature is dealt damage this turn, it deals that much damage to each other creature and each player. So I really love this card in a Commander game. It's an instant, right? It's just one of those cards that can sit in your hand and you just wait for the right moment to use it. It can be a board wipe, right? It's similar to Chandra's Ignition a little bit. The same sort of thing, but basically instead of dealing damage equal to the creature's power, you're dealing damage equal to the damage that's being dealt to that creature. So you can have a 1/1, right? You can have a 1/1 creature and your opponent attacks with their giant 8/8 creature, for example, right? They swing in, you chump with your 1/1, and then you respond by choosing that creature, right? The creature that's blocking. And whenever that creature is dealt damage this turn, it's going to deal that much damage to each other creature and each player. So it's going to take 8 damage, so it's going to deal 8 damage. Like, it's going to die anyway, obviously, right? It's already dying, so you don't care about your 1/1. What you want to do is you want to deal 8 damage to each other creature in play. So it's basically a board wipe. Also, you're probably going to be guaranteed to kill the creature that is attacking you. Also, just like with Chandra's Ignition, the wording here is super important, right? Whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage. So it is the creature dealing the damage, right? Lifelink, Death Touch, right? Any of those things. If you have a creature with lifelink that you want to maybe chump with, you can do that. If you have a creature with Death Touch, it's going to end up killing all the other creatures because it is dealing damage. Really versatile card. There's just a lot of different ways that you can use it. I always love mentioning cards like that. Coming in at number 2 this week, Attrition. 1 black enchantment. Pay 1 black, sacrifice a creature, destroy target non-black creature. I just talked about this in my Underwhelming Commanders video. This used to be, again, another card that I saw in Commander all the time. It was printed in the original Commander set. Really has disappeared. I don't love the non-black thing. I've said it before, but it's not like one shot, like a one spell. This is repeatable. And in any deck where you want to be sacrificing stuff, like the Ephemia deck, where I'm just making zombie tokens all the time, so, I can attack with them, or I can use them to destroy my opponent's creatures. Just a really powerful card. It's almost similar to Aura Shards in a way where when it sits on the table, a lot of people just won't play their creatures, right? If you have a non-black creature like your commander, you're just not going to cast it because you know it's going to die right away, right? So it just sort of keeps people from playing their creatures. It can be fantastic in a commander game. Coming in at number 3, Attunement. 2 and a blue enchantment. Return Attunement to its owner's hand. Draw 3 cards, then discard 4 cards. There is very few ways to fill your graveyard better than this, okay? It really is fantastic. Any self-mill deck is probably going to want this. It's 3 mana, draw 3, then discard 4. So obviously you're not getting card advantage here. You're going to play this in a deck where you want to be filling your graveyard, right? I had thought about putting this in the Octavia deck that I made. You could put it in a deck like that where you want to be getting your graveyard full as fast as possible. It's just really, really good at filling your graveyard, right? You just can keep reusing it. 3 mana, draw 3, discard 4. I like discarding, even though this discards more cards than you are drawing. I like it because at least you get to choose rather than it just getting milled into your graveyard from the top of your library, right? So just a really fantastic card if you just want to be filling your graveyard or if you just want to dig through your deck super, super fast. Coming in at number 4 and another enchantment, it's Aura Flux, 2 and a blue. Other enchantments have, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this enchantment unless you pay 2. So I gave this a mention in my off-color removal, right? Because this is a great way for blue to deal with enchantments. And they've been giving blue ways to deal with artifacts lately. Still doesn't deal with enchantments very well. I mean, you bounce it, right? You bounce it, you counter it. It's really tough for blue to permanently deal with enchantments. This is one of the ways. I mean, obviously your opponent can just pay the 2. Your opponent, if they're playing, say, enchantment tribal deck, they're not going to be able to pay 2 for everything, right? They're just not. And speaking of blue, dealing with enchantments, Aura Thief, 3 and a blue illusion creature, 2/2 with flying. When Aura Thief dies, you gain control of all enchantments. Pretty fantastic. Just talked about this in my Kel's Fight Fixer Underwhelming Commanders deck. It's a great include in any blue deck where you can sacrifice your creatures, right? If you can't sacrifice it yourself, I imagine it'll, you can just chump with it. It'll just sit and play, and your opponents won't want to ever attack you because you'll just chump with this and then gain control of all their enchantments, right? It's sort of like Academy Rector. Academy Rector, when you play it, it'll just sit there and your opponents just won't touch you, right? Because they know you're just going to chump with it and then go get whatever you want out of your library. Or a Thief is the same way. Just a really fantastic card. You could just put it in any deck, right? You can just put it in any deck, any blue deck, and it's going to do lots of good work for you. Next up, Aura Fracture. And this one, I just had to mention this one, because it is so unusual and so unique. 2 and a white enchantment. Sacrifice a land, destroy target enchantment. I mean, what the heck? Like, that is I've never seen this card before, and it is just such an odd combination. It's a white enchantment. You sacrifice a land to destroy target enchantment? I mean, obviously, repeatable destroy enchantment effect is pretty good. You just don't see this. It's just so unusual. I'm not sure exactly where you use it. I was thinking my land tax seismic assault idea might actually want this card, because with that deck, you don't want a lot of lands in play, right? Or else your land tax gets shut off. So you actually do want sacrifice effects in that deck so that you guaranteed are getting the 3 lands in your hand every turn from your land tax. So that might actually fit there. I don't know. I mean, it really is a very unusual card. I don't know where exactly you would play it in a white deck where you want lands in your graveyard, right? I guess. So, but it's so unique, so interesting. I just had to give it a mention. I'm sure someone's going to find a place for it. Coming in at number 7, Avarice Amulet, 4 mana artifact equipment. And it has Equip 2. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has Vigilance, and at the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card. So that's pretty good, right? +2/+0 and Vigilance, and you get to draw an extra card every turn. However, when equipped creature dies, target opponent gains control of Avarice Amulet. So this used to be a favorite of mine back in the day before they changed the dies rule, right? It used to be, for any really new Commander players out there, if your commander died, it didn't trigger a dies trigger. It would just go straight to the command zone, but they changed that last year, I believe. So this used to be a fantastic card in the format because you could put it on your commander, and that second ability there, whenever a equipped creature dies, target opponent gains control of it, that would never happen because your commander would just go straight to the command zone. It wouldn't trigger this. Now it's not so good, obviously, because they changed that, so you can't do that anymore. However, there are still some decks where you can use this. My Daragaz deck that I made, the sort of hating on creatures deck, I put this in there, right? Because Daragaz, if he would die, instead you exile. So there's no actual die there. You can stick this on your Daragaz. It's going to get +2/+0 and Vigilance. So a 9/7 Flying Trample Haste Vigilance is pretty darn good. And then also you get to draw that extra card every turn, and you're never going to have to worry about it dying. Also a Rayami deck where, if a non-token creature would die, exile that card with a blood counter on it instead. So in a Rayami deck, because nothing is dying, nothing's going to the graveyard, you could put it on any of your creatures, right? So I think it would be a great include in a deck like that. So any deck where you have some way to stop creatures from dying or stop dies triggers from happening, it would work really good in a deck like that. Just draw an extra card every turn. Coming in at number 8, Aven Mimeomancer. 1 white, blue, bird wizard. It's a 3/1 with flying, and it has a very unique and I think very powerful ability. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a feather counter on target creature. Any creature. If you do, that creature has base power and toughness 3/1 and has flying for as long as a feather counter is on it. So right away you think, okay, well, I put this in my bird tribal deck, and you probably would, right? And so what happens is if you make in a bunch of 1/1 bird tokens, you can now put a feather counter on it and it becomes a 3/1 instead of just a 1/1, right? So you're just bumping up its power. In fact, if you have a Kangi deck, Kangi actually cares about feather counters, right? When it enters the battlefield, if its kicker cost was paid, put X feather counters on it. So you could actually put these counters on your Kangi. I imagine people probably have this in their Kangi Airy Keeper deck already. And basically you're just pumping your whole team every time you put a feather counter on it, right? However, where I think this card is really good is you can use it on your opponent's creatures, right? I thought, it'd be great if you could use -1/-1 counters with this. It would be the same as a Vadi Ildal, where I make my opponent's creature into a 1 toughness and then put a -1/-1 counter on it and it dies. However, white and blue doesn't really do that. So I don't know, if you had a deck that had white and blue and also did -1/-1 counters, it would be a great include. But even then, it just can make your opponent's creature a lot worse. If your opponent has a giant creature, its base power and toughness is going to be 3/1, right? So if your opponent has an Avacyn and it's a giant 8/8 flyer with vigilance that's smoking you every turn, you can just put a feather counter on it and now it's a 3/1 instead of an 8/8. Way less menacing, way less of a threat, right? Again, very unique ability that I think you could probably use a few different ways, and I just like the ability to, I can put it on my opponent's giant creature and now my opponent's giant creature is way less of a threat. Coming in at number 9, Avoid Fate. And again, this is another one that was in my off-color removal spells list. 1 green instant, counter target instant or aura spell that targets a permanent you control. It's a green counter spell. I mean, it only targets instants or auras, but you know, a lot of the removal in the format is instant speed. I've had a lot of guys comment on my videos where they're like, I don't even play removal unless it's an instant. So this is going to counter all of them. And I talked about in that video, I compared it to Veil of Summer and how, yeah, maybe Veil of Summer is better than this, but Veil of Summer doesn't stop a Swords to Plowshares, the most popular removal spell in the entire format. And it's actually the most popular non-mana rock card in the entire format, and Avoid Fate will stop it. Veil of Summer will not. Avoid Fate is going to counter any instant. The aura thing, that actually might come into effect, right? If somebody wants to put a prison term on your commander or a Song of the Dryads or something, right? But more so, it's the instant thing, right? The counter target instant, most removal is instant speed. So I think it definitely could see some play in a few decks. And finally today, Awakening, and of course another enchantment, 2 green green. It's a really powerful effect if no one's ever seen this before. At the beginning of each upkeep, untap all creatures and lands. That's it. And this is everybody, not just you, right? It untaps everyone's creatures, everyone's lands. So obviously, whenever you have a card like this, you want to break symmetry, right? Yes, your opponents can take advantage of it, but you're going to take more advantage of it. I've seen people play this in their Thrasios deck where on everyone's upkeep, I'm untapping everything, right? It's the same with a Seedborn Muse. You're doing the Seedborn Muse thing, except everyone gets to do it, but you're taking more advantage of it. I'm going to untap on everyone's upkeep, and then I'm going to use my Thrasios once or twice or 3 times, right? And I'm getting way more value out of it than my opponents are. Maybe I'm playing my Svella deck and I get to make mana rocks on every single player's turn. That seems pretty good. I can even use the last ability there on every single player's turn, right? It's a little risky to allow your opponents to do that as well. But if you're in a deck where you're really, you know you're going to take advantage of it, you could definitely give it some consideration. That is it for today. That is 10 more cards that you should be putting in your commander decks. If you're a fan of the channel, click on my TCG Player link. If you're going to buy some of these cards, you know, and you like TCG Player, just click on the link. It helps support the channel. Also, if you really are a fan of the channel, I have a Patreon. I have lots more content on my Patreon. If you guys really like what I'm doing, also helps support the channel as well, right? So that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.